Hey, everybody, I'm Dr. Seth for Couch Commentary. I'm a psychologist, and when I do couch commentary, I talk about current events, something that's going on in the culture that I think has value to talk about from a psychological perspective. So today we're talking about Bama Rush. Now, what is Bama Rush? You may have heard about it in the media and in the news. You may have heard about it as a viral TikTok sensation. What we're talking about is University of Alabama sorority rushes. The University of Alabama is famous for its enormous and intense sorority rushing experiences. Rushing, of course, happens nationwide with Greek fraternities as well, but in this video, we will talk about it from a perspective related to the sororities because I think the sororities offer some more complex challenges than I think a lot of the fraternities do. So, Alabama and Bama Rush, what it's commonly called as a hashtag, is just one example. But what we're really talking about are sororities and the very intense, what I would call the breathtaking intensity of the experience of rushing some of these sororities today. It's like so many things today in our culture. It, in some ways, you could argue, has gotten out of hand. Out of hand, what do you mean? Well, what I mean is that there are rushing consultants today that some people will pay. You might think to yourself, rush consultant? What on earth does a rush consultant do? Can you imagine a lot of these young people that are rushing sororities? They might not necessarily have the money themselves for this. So guess who ends up paying for it? Parents. And you know what? A lot of those parents can feel pressured by their daughters to try to help them get into the sorority of their choice. So a rush consultant, it may do things like help them practice social skills, conversation skills, getting ready for interviews. It may help them work on their resume, crafting the perfect resume to present to the sorority house of choice. It may also include an audit, not of taxes, for example, or anything mathematical or numeric, but an audit of wardrobe, outfit choices to curate just the right outfit to impress, to come across as the type that that sorority house wants for their girls. Now, when you think about rush consultants, it reminds me of the college scandal, people trying to pay consultants to kind of fabricate things to try to get their kids into colleges, the perfect college, the desired college of their choice. And so anytime you have anything like that going on, there's so much anxiety. There is so much anxiety that is a part of that intensity to get into the right college or get into the right group. And of course, as a psychologist, anytime I see that that level of anxiety is existing, I think it's important to look at how to manage that anxiety to make sure that what we are seeking out in our lives is good for our mental health, because sometimes we can want something so badly and crave it and pursue it, but almost go to addictive lengths to get it. And that's when things can get really unhealthy for us. But here's what I think is really important. When you take something like sorority rushing, and especially if you happen to see any of the videos or read at all about Bama Rush and some particular sororities and just how intense the fight is to get into those. Well, when you look at that, it can be very easy to judge it as a negative thing. It can be very easy to judge it. I think just sororities in general, Greek life in general, is something that people have very polarizing opinions for. Some people feel very strongly about it. It makes me think of, like, if sororities, for example, were a singer, it would be Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift, an example of someone that I think is extremely polarizing. People tend to really feel very strongly in favor of her or very strongly against. That's really kind of similar, I think, with what happens with sororities. And yet, when we can look at this in the whole picture with psychological flexibility, we can actually look at what are the positives and what are some of the negatives. So the positives, there are positives, no doubt, with sororities. And one of them is that a sorority can offer someone a sense of community, a sense of belonging. Now, psychologically, That's incredibly important. In fact, a long time ago, Maslow created what's called a hierarchy of needs and researched the top needs that a human being has to overall feel balanced, to overall feel good and have well being. The first need, of course, the first priority of needs a human being has, according to Maslow, is physiological needs for food, water. You need those over everything else to stay alive. The second priority of needs, according to Maslow, safety needs, needs for actual physical safety, security, health. Those are a second priority level of need. And there are several more levels of needs, according to Maslow. But the third most important need that Maslow believed we need to feel balanced and have well being overall is a sense of love and belonging, a sense of belonging that is crucial to a person feeling balanced in this world, to a person's well being. And a sorority can offer that, a sense of coming home to a group of people. When you think about a kid gets raised in a family and a group and they are all interdependent, well, people get that sense when they come home after a day in classes to a sorority. They get a sense that they are coming home to a group of people that are interdependent, live together, they make meals together, they eat together, and that sense of community can be incredibly helpful, can provide a sense of binding, can create a bond, a sense of glue, a sense of anchoring that is really positive, that can be really positive in a young person's life at college. Another factor that I think is a really positive thing for sororities is that in a lot of Greek life, one of the things that they prioritize is community involvement. So imagine a college, a university is located, of course, in a city or a town. And so sororities a lot of times will prioritize hours spent partnering with organizations in the community to help, to integrate with the community, to be of service. And I always say in all of my hundreds of videos here on my YouTube channel that being of service is one of the best things that we can do for our health and also for our sense of purpose and belonging in this world. So sororities really have that right in so many ways. I can share as a psychologist who lives in Los Angeles, for example, at UCLA. UCLA Greek system partners with dozens of partner organizations, could be food banks, schools, all sorts of civic organizations to try to be of service. And that value is something that is so good for young people to invest in, especially, right? Because so many older people look at what we call young people today, the college age generation, and there's so much negative talk and judgment about, well, they're just always on their phones, they're just staring at their screens the whole time. They don't have the same social skills. I hear a lot of people talk negatively about some of these stereotypes of younger generations, Gen Z. Well, sororities and Greek life, for example, can give people a chance to move away from their screen and their phone and actually get out in the community and help and be of service with others, especially connect maybe with people that are different from them, that are not like them. You know, one of the downsides that people say about sororities or Greek life in general is that they can be very homogenous. It's always people that are so similar. Well, the good news is that sororities really value partnering with community organizations where they end up partnering and working with people who are different from them. That's a good thing. But like I said, because the value in looking at anything really and figuring out its value is to look at the whole picture. While there are definitely some positives, it is important to just be mindful of some of the negatives. One negative component of sororities can be the expense of it, the financial costs involved with sororities. So there are a lot of fees associated with sororities. Now, some schools tend to be more affordable to join a sorority, while other schools tend to be incredibly expensive. But there are monthly chapter fees. There's an initiation fee. There are dues that need to be paid for the sorority events that are housed. There are all sorts of costs associated with it, as well as just the cost to live in the sorority house and the food. So a lot of times there is room and board, for example, at a dormitory college, and yet the individual can choose to stay in a Greek house, in a sorority house instead, The prices usually are not exactly the same. In fact, sometimes they are significantly more expensive. So, what this does is this creates an equity issue a lot of times. So, that there are young people that maybe don't come from the financial resources that others do, and they may not feel like they have the money that they can afford to keep up with everybody and with all the expenses to join a sorority. So, it can create a really uncomfortable, weird dynamic on a college campus. And like I said earlier, it also impacts the parents because a lot of times it's the parents that have to come up with all these funds. So a parent is going to experience more stress and anxiety, especially if they don't have a lot of financial resources themselves. They don't have a high paying job. Well, they have a daughter who really, really, really wants to join. It means the world to them. And the parent wants to make their child happy. Well, again, it creates a lot of anxiety and stress. This system, this sought after sorority system that somebody may want to join. And the final point that I want to talk about is the issue of belonging. So, belonging can be a very positive thing. If you have a sorority and the sorority values really good treatment, a true sisterhood, looking out for each other, being kind to others. And when you think about that sorority's relationship with the campus in general, overall, all the students, including other females on the campus, if you take that sorority and the values of it are to be kind, are to partner with other people on campus in campus events and support so that the sisterhood is not just necessarily within that sorority house, but with the females on the campus overall and with all of the men on the campus to partner, to integrate, be a part of one larger community, then it can be a very positive thing. But at the same time, we have all seen the movie Mean Girls. And it's also possible that sometimes an organization like this, it can work to ostracize people. So if there is a sorority where there are some individuals in the sorority that try to establish a social ranking where some girls are more valuable than others, where some girls are more attractive than others, maybe have more expensive clothing than others, if those factors get used at all as sort of weapons in the social hierarchy ranking of that sorority house, it can be really negative. It can actually undo the whole purpose of the sense of community and sisterhood that the sorority is meant to uphold. So these are all just things to think about. Again, overall big picture, we want to zoom out and we want to look at something for the positives and the negatives so that when you all make decisions about what is the right decision for you, what types of organizations do you want to be a part of, how do you want to comport yourself within that organization, how do you want to operate as a member of that organization with the larger community overall. These are all things that you can think about. But like anything, it's my belief that sororities are like so many things in life in that they have advantages and they may have disadvantages. They may have pros and they have cons. And so the question is, what works for individual people? And also, by really being honest with yourself and looking at all of the different issues involved, we can actually understand something like sororities and even Bama Rush better.